Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Wild and the Whites podcast. Welcome. So this is going to be a weird episode. It's just me, Zach, here talking to you guys. I wanted to do a quick podcast this week for everybody out there, my fellow hunters that are out there in the woods. It is in mid-September right now. We've had a couple weeks under our belt here of bear season, and we're getting into the beginning of deer season. And I wanted to just talk about kind of what I'm seeing in the woods in general, not specifics on specific places or anything like that. And I wanted to just put that out there for a discussion topic. And so what I want everybody to do, if you listen to this episode and you have something to add to it, can you go to our Facebook page or can you comment on this video and tell us what you are seeing as well, because we got people from all over the state. The different areas in the state may be experiencing some different things. So what I want to do is try to put together as much information as we can to then put out there to everybody to try to help everybody have a successful season. So if I can talk about here in the line between the White Mountains and the Lakes region here in New Hampshire, maybe people north of Franconia Notch, they're maybe seeing something completely different. Maybe people down near the Massachusetts border are going to be seeing something completely different too. So if we can put together our heads here and try to get our heads in the game and try to figure out what's going on, it can lead to everybody having some success this season. And that's what it's all about, is trying to help each other out. So the first thing that I want to talk about, again, I'm not going to be specific really to deer or bear, but you'll hear that it is leaning towards the deer activity, because that's just kind of where my brain is going at. I've kind of left the bear behind now that September 15th has hit. I'm in archery season. I'm kind of really focusing on deer. That's just how I do it. That's just where I'm at. But I know there's a lot of bear hunters out there. So if you want to tune in here, you want to throw your information up to try to help bear hunters that are going to be hunting now that we're wrapping up bait season pretty soon. That's going to be a pretty important thing for people to start hearing about if they want to be successful with harvesting a bear. So please feel free to add that on. But in terms of overall things, a couple weeks ago, for any new hunters out there, that 80-degree stretch that we had, if you were hunting during that time, do not be discouraged by that warm stretch of weather and the zero activity that you were seeing during that time. Times like that, yes, hunting shade, hunting water sources, hunting those bedding areas where they're probably going to just be lying low all day long, that could get you some success. And I know some people that did have some success during that stretch, but it makes activity super slow when that happens. But you probably, if you've been out then and out now after this past week of the colder weather, when it's dipping into the 40s at night, and it's getting into the 60s during the day, that's a pretty good stretch of a 20-degree difference that can really start pushing some deer and bears to be getting up and moving a little bit more, because they're feeling that chill in the air and they're trying to just pack on the weight to get through the season and get through the wintertime. So that segues right into the second thing, that you want to be focusing on food sources right now. We are, when it comes to deer, we are not talking about the rut at all right now. Okay. They're not really preparing for it except for trying to pack on weight to be able to build muscle, to be able to have the extra weight, to be able to run during the rut. That they are preparing for it, but it's not rut activity. It's just feeding activity right now. So food sources are what you want to be focusing on. Okay. And you got to know what your food sources are. Okay. So right now, you want to be hunting in the cold times, So get out there in the early mornings, get out there in the evenings. The midday, if it's really warm, you might not be getting as much activity still. They're probably going to lay low. So if you can find those bedding areas and get right in on them, great. But if not, try to find the food sources and tuck in between the bedding area and the food source and get them on their path to that food. What I'm seeing for food sources out there right now, kind of a weird year. But this is something that I really want people to tune in on, because this is just what I'm seeing. This is what I've heard some other people around here are seeing, but I'm hearing mixed reports from all over the state. So this is what I really want people to tune in on, because I'm very interested in this. I see no beech nuts around here whatsoever. I haven't seen a single beech nut anywhere around here, on the ground, on trees at all. I'm not waiting for them to fall, because I don't think they're even up there. Apples. A lot of like the main apple orchards that are on public land, I see very few to almost no apples in those orchards. Whether or not that's just a cyclical year like the beech nuts may be, or maybe there's another reason behind it, I don't know. But I'm seeing very few apples. But that being said, a lot of those orchards still have browse in them that I'm seeing the deer hit. So they're still in the orchards, but not as much as they should be this time of year, with the apples starting to drop when they mature. So that's interesting to me, and I want to know from people all over the state, what are you seeing for apples? Because your commercial orchards, they're going to be able to put different types of trees up to be able to cyclically make sure that when a certain breed is having an off year, certain trees are having an off year, other trees are going to be producing. But those long-term old school orchards that are out on public land, none of that happens. So is this an off year, and what do you guys think is the reason for that off year? Do you think that it was a pruning year? Do you think that it was a it's just a cyclical thing? I mean, we've had a good amount of water. It's not a drought season by any means, and even a couple years ago when we were having a drought, there were more apples then than there are now. So that's what I'm seeing. Can you guys confirm that? Can you guys dispel that? Can you guys help us out there a little bit and figure that mystery out? And by all means, if anybody is seeing beech nuts anywhere, the one thing that I will say is that I haven't spent a lot of time up in higher elevations yet, like high elevations, like over 3,000 feet. So that may change some things too, that like 2,500 to 3,000 feet, sometimes I can see a change there. Last year we had a weird frost that came through and killed off a lot of things, but if you went up higher in elevation, you would actually be able to find acorns and beech nuts and that kind of thing, because they never froze prior to that frost, so the buds actually survived. And so people north of the Notch, I know that there was a frost that happened up there. Did that kill off stuff? What are you guys seeing for activity up there for food? The big thing that I'm noticing right now is acorns. Okay. And it's weird. I was actually having a discussion with Paul about this, and what he's heard, and it's a good point. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying that this is fact, but it's something to definitely watch out for. People are calling this a really great acorn year. And it is. The acorns are dropping like crazy right now. If you walk through an oak grove right now, you are going to just be tripping, because there's the ground's moving with the acorns that are on there. You can't get good footing half the time because there's just that many acorns down. But what Paul brought up was that he's heard that all the acorns kind of dropped at once and dropped really early. So there's not a long-term food source there, because once those acorns drop, they can start to rot pretty quickly. And then once they rot, the deer aren't going to eat them. So yes, it looks like a really great acorn year, and a lot of people are excited about that. But there's that problem. Did all the acorns drop at once? I am still hearing them rain down. I am. So there's still some in the trees that are coming down, but how much? Looking through binoculars, I can still see a fair amount of oak trees that are holding acorns. But I want to know what you guys are seeing, because I think that it's a really good acorn year. That's my personal opinion. I think that it's going to be a long-term drop, because I am seeing acorns still up in a lot of trees. But there's been some talk that they're dropping way too early and way too fast, and that it's not going to be a long-term crop. So I could be completely wrong on that. This could be a chance for me to learn something. So please comment on that. Tell me what you're seeing. I'd love to learn from what you guys are observing out there. And the other problem with it is when you have a food source, for any brand new hunters out there, it's great to find a food source, but you have to see two things. One, are the deer actively in that food source right now? So if you go in there, is there sign that the deer are pawing up and eating all that food right now? If it's acorns, you'll see fresh tracks, you'll see fresh droppings, you'll see fresh paw marks where they're moving leaves around, and the ground is obviously still moist and dark and everything like that, hasn't dried out much. That's what you're looking for. Or you could see sign, but it could be dried out scat, right? It could be dried out dirt where they were pawing and it's been there for a couple weeks. A deer isn't going to be, and bears and everything like this, they're going to eat it when it's really good. Think about the food that you cook, right? It's best right off the frying pan, so to speak, right? Right out of the oven. If you put it in the fridge and you let it sit there for a while, well, if you eat it the next day, it's still pretty good. If you eat it a week later, not as good, right? It's the same thing with what's dropping out of the trees. They're best right off the tree, and a week later, might not be as good. So they're going to eat them when it's fresh, right off the tree. So as long as they're still dropping and there's fresh sign that they're eating right underneath those trees, hunt those trees. But the moment that it dies down, there's no sense in hunting those trees if there's not fresh sign, right? So how do you find that? Well, it's a problem right now because there's so many acorns that you could, if you have a 5-acre plot that's got a ton of oaks in it, and you're like, wow, there's so much food here. Well, it's bow season. It's not rifle season, right? So a 40-yard shot in a circle around you on 5 acres, that's a big wish for that deer to come in exactly where you need them to. So you need to figure out how they're accessing that food plot, that food source, right? You need to figure out where they're bedding, how they're accessing it, how they're traveling. Because if you sit in the food, if it's not a funnel that is in that food, like that food's not sitting in a natural funnel that brings them in naturally within a good distance where it's more likely than not that they're going to be within bow range, it is almost not worth sitting on that food and scenting it up and getting them to not want to come in there anymore. Because the moment that you start putting your scent in there at all, they're going to start moving out of there too. They're going to start understanding what's going on. You're going to start pressuring them. So that's something to keep in mind too. So if you can figure out where they're bedding, and you can figure out where they're eating, and you can figure out their travel corridor between the two, I would recommend sitting on that travel corridor rather than the actual food itself. Okay. So that brings me to the next topic that I wanted to cover. What's everybody seeing out there for deer activity in regards to pressure? Because if you see an area and there's always trucks parked in it, or you walk through it and there's new cameras up there or something like that, and there's evidence that hunters are going in and out of there, this is primarily a public land issue. What's the deer activity like? Are they going nocturnal? Because that's what I'm starting to see, is a lot of nocturnal activity starting up in a lot of my areas. And I don't want to say like they only go nocturnal, because clearly there's some place out there where they are daylighting. We just need to find where they are, because they're not daylighting in the areas that are being hunted anymore. Deer are super smart. Bear are super smart. They start to pattern you like you pattern them. And the moment that they start getting pressured, they know what's going on and they're going to move out of there. I think that was part of the portion that I made a mistake on this year, and I'll readily admit it to the world of this podcast, that hunting over the bear bait, I hunted 3 evenings in a row. Yes, I practiced scent control. I was quiet getting in and out of there. I did all those things. But I heard what I thought was a bear coming in on the first night, and he very well, or she very well could have winded me, because never came into the bait, but I heard the noises of something big walking and snapping and everything like that. And I figured there was something coming in and never came in. I think they patterned because they're showing up like an hour after I leave. And that makes perfect sense that, well, if they're showing up an hour after I leave, then they know that I'm sitting there and they're waiting a good little buffer, and then they're coming in and they're eating. So, yep, I think that was my mistake. I think they patterned me. I pressured that stand too much, and, well, that's to my detriment, and it is what it is. At this point, I can't control it, right? So I just got to adapt and overcome and try to figure out a different way of harvesting a bear this year. I'm starting to not pressure that stand. I'm leaving it off for a while to see maybe if we get some daylight activity coming in, not hunt it for a week or so, 5 days to a week, see if maybe they start daylighting, feeling more comfortable coming in. But we're coming up on the end of bait season. I don't have a lot of time, so it doesn't look like I'm harvesting one over bait this year, and that's fine. But that goes to my topic of, one, what are you guys seeing for pressure in areas? Are they starting to understand that, oh, this is hunting season, we're starting getting pressured here, people are in the woods when they're not usually there, and they're putting that together? Are you seeing them start to move out of patterns because of pressure? And two, it's a warning to everybody out there, especially the new hunters: do not pressure areas. Try to make sure that A, your wind is proper for that area, and two, that you're not going to the same spot over and over and over and over and over again, because your noise that you can make going in there, the scent that you leave behind, because you will just pretty much always leave some scent behind. No matter how good a scent control you practice, there's going to be something left behind. It's whether it's something different on whatever, they are going to notice something, and they're going to pick up on that. And if they're not a fawn that's never seen a hunting season before, they live their lives as prey. They start to pattern everything. So they're going to figure out something's not right. I remember this from last year or the year before, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to start adapting to that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not still hitting that same food source. That doesn't mean that they're not still bedding in that same area. But how they get to those areas may change. If you're hunting that travel corridor, that travel corridor might dry up and they don't travel that anymore. And instead, they may stay in bedding for a while and still travel that same travel corridor, but after dark. Or they may be like, no, I'm going to just loop around him because I know that he's there. And I'm going to loop around him and I'm going to come in on the food this way. And then you're going to be like, I'm not getting any deer passing by me. I have this camera there. I'm not getting any deer on it. And they've completely moved out of the area. They haven't moved out of the area. They're just not stepping in front of your camera, and they're not coming on that same travel corridor anymore. They're still there. They're just moving through a different way to avoid you. So that's something to definitely just be aware of. Do not overpressure areas, and do not avoid areas where other people are pressuring them. If you constantly are seeing trucks in a certain spot, that's kind of cool, because you know, okay, they're walking in from there. If their truck's parked there, if their car's parked there, they're walking in from there. So they're pushing things out of there, okay? So if you can figure out the other areas around there where they may be, you can utilize that pressure to your advantage and get around the pressure on the backside of the pressure, enter a different way, get in the same plot of woods, and then let that pressure push everything to you. That can make you successful as well. Little tips, little tricks. I know that we have some new hunters that tune in to this podcast and that are looking for any little bit of information they can, so I wanted to throw some out there. But I also want to learn myself, and new hunters that are out there, what are you guys seeing too? Because the way that you look at the woods is different from a seasoned hunter, and sometimes you notice things that we take for granted, and we look right over and we're like, oh, I should have noticed that, but I didn't, because I'm focused on X, Y, and Z, right? So yeah, just please tune into this. Let me know what you're thinking. Go to I'm going to post this up on Facebook like I always do with every episode. Comment on that post or comment on the video itself. And then what I'd like to do is leave this for about a week or so, maybe a little bit shorter than that, for people to comment on, and then put it out there, because then that'll give still a little bit of time during that early October stretch where they're still focused on food before the pre-rut starts. And yeah, then hopefully that can get some people some good results, and we can start getting some pictures on the Facebook page of any successful hunts that people have had. And that goes out to anybody out there that is that likes the page, that follows the page, that likes the channel. If you're successful, we want to enjoy that with you. We want to congratulate you. We want to see that. Please post it up on the Facebook page. Like, we want to see that big time. I just posted a video of my buddy Tom Arnold that harvested a beautiful buck. He's got a YouTube channel. Go check that out. It's just Tom Arnold on YouTube. I posted that on the page. Those kinds of things, yeah, we want to see that. And every harvest is a joy to all of us, and we want to celebrate that. So if it's a 90-pound doe, we want to see that, because that means something to you. You are one of our followers, and we support you, and we want to support what you're doing out there and congratulate you on that. So don't think just because I posted this 195-pound beautiful buck that Tom got to the channel that it has to be something like that. No, it doesn't have to be something like that. It just, anything. We want to see it. So please post them up there so we can all enjoy that, and everybody can be a community on our Facebook page. That's what we're ultimately trying to do, is create this community of people from all walks of different life and experience levels, and enjoy the White Mountains in different ways, right? So just throw it up there. We want to see it. So again, just comment on anything, what you're seeing, so I can learn about it, and the rest of us can learn about it. And what I'll do is try to do that follow-up video. So lastly, I want to just talk about our episode next week. Next Saturday, it'll be a pretty darn cool episode, but the editing is going to be heavy for me to do, so it's just taking me a little bit longer. So I'm throwing together this quick episode to get something out to you guys, and I thought this was a great idea. So next week's episode is a follow-up to the Onyx scouting that I did with Andrew a couple weeks ago. We got questions about what do we do after that. So I brought Andrew in, sat him down on a plot that I have wanted to check out, but I haven't checked out, had him e-scout it, and then we went out and did a little filming while we were out and about. And you guys probably saw the break in the woods photo that Andrew posted on the page. That was from our excursion that we went on. So we did some filming. We did some talks about what we were seeing. We didn't find a heck of a lot, but it was kind of cool because what we did find could be sign to somebody that doesn't know necessarily what they're looking at. So I was able to say, hey, look, you see this? This is cool, but it's not super cool. And explain why on that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to give it all away. I want you guys to tune in for it. But that's going to be a very video heavy episode. So anybody listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, I apologize. But all of that stuff that is happening out in the woods is not going to be on the audio only podcast. It's only going to be in the video. So it's only going to be on YouTube. You got to tune into YouTube to see that stuff out there. But you'll be able to hear the beginning portion, and you'll be able to hear the summary portion on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that, so you know what to do for next week's episode. But I'll reiterate it at the end of next week when that video goes up. So I'm in the middle of editing it as we speak. So thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing all your comments on what you're seeing out there in the woods. You guys have a great one, and I'll see you on the next episode.